Welcome to the start of the watercolour course, and before we get on to paint pictures like these, which we will do during the course, I want to show you the very basics of how you lay out a palette and put down your paper and look after your brushes. So let's start off, shall we, by laying out the paints in our palette. What we want to do if we're starting off from scratch with a brand new palette and some fresh tubes of paint, which I recommend you do, is to have a look at what the colours are first of all and then lay them out in a very logical order within the palette. So here I've just put down a little blob of paint from each of the tubes just to see what colour I've got there. And I've tried to put them down and arrange them into an order that makes some sense. So the yellows are together, the browns are together, the reds are together, and the blues and so on. And they go from light, warm colours at the bottom right up through to the cooler colours towards the top there. So I've got a layout which will work very well within the palette. Now here's my empty palette, and I just want to put the paints in the same order that I've worked out on my piece of paper. So I'm going to start off here with lemon yellow at the very bottom and put in a good dollop of paint there. Screw the top back on so that we don't waste any, and you can see there's a good amount of paint in there. Here comes the next one, cadmium yellow next to it. A lot of paint in there because it means that you can just go back in time and time again into the palette. The paints are there, and you're not having to put out little tiny spots each time you paint with. Here you've got a good amount of paint to go into with your brush, and you can just top it up as you need to as you go along. So we've got the two yellows, and above that we've got the two browns, two reds, and the two blues at the top. And with that we've got everything we need. There's the colour chart which goes alongside it, so I can remember what's what. I've written the names down so I know which is which, and then I can use that palette time and time again. Just close over the lid, there we are, and we can use that over and over again. Now the paper, I use 140-pound Bockingford paper, which I find doesn't wrinkle if it's well held down, so that saves having to stretch paper. So what I'm doing here is just putting paper down onto my backing board, and I've got some masking tape, the sort of stuff that you can buy from any DIY shop, and just press that along the top of the paper just to hold it down, and then work just around the edges of the paper just with the same thing, just holding it down with masking tape, and that will do the job nicely. It'll stop the paper moving around, and it means that when you pull off the masking tape at the very end, you're left with a lovely white edge to the paper, which just makes the whole thing look very nice and attractive. So there's the paper taped down, and be ready to paint on that. Now if that's too large a piece, I can always divide it up by putting some more masking tape across the middle somewhere, and that gives you two pieces of paper to work on for the price of one. And finally, keeping your paint moist. When it comes to the end of a painting session, I always put a drop of water onto the top of each of my paints in the palette there. It just keeps them moist, it stops them from drying out and going hard, and it means that the next time you come to paint, you're just ready to pick up lots and lots of paint on the brush without having to scrub around with the brush and try and lift it off. It's nice and moist, nice and soft, and it comes up on the brush. And so the last thing now is just to say how to look after your brushes. Well, brushes are probably the most expensive part of the toolkit that we need for painting, and so it's worth looking after them. So at the end of a session, just wash them out in clean water and then dry them off on a towel and just reshape the point of the brush. So you get a nice point at the very end there, and if you just store that away now, that'll be safe for the next time. What you don't want to do is just leave the brush in water, because the end bends over and furs out, and you can very quickly ruin a good brush by doing that. So always take it out, dry it off, and reshape the point.